Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we are going to go over all of the travel mistakes I have made and how we can learn from my mistakes so we can be better travelers. I don't know how many mistakes there are. There's quite a few, so let's get right into it. My first mistake, it took me a while to learn this one, and it is I no longer book the earliest flight just to save $50. Now hear me out. A lot of those like really cheap flights have really weird times like 6 a.m. and for me, it's worth the money to spend a little bit more just to leave at a more reasonable hour. That way I'm not waking 3 or 4 in the morning just to make that early flight. I'm not depending on leaving at weird times of the night for my safety. And also just because you're saving that like $50 to get that cheap flight, now think about all the things you have to buy because of that flight. For example, you're gonna have to probably buy something at the airport, something to eat, which can get really expensive rather than waking up at a normal time and eating breakfast at home. You're also probably gonna have to take an Uber or taxi rather than depending on public transportation if you live in a major city. And let's also not forget the biggest issue is if you're flying to a place and you're checking into a hotel, that hotel will not be ready for you until later in the day. So this is a perfect example. I always would fly to Miami. I would always book the cheapest, earliest flight out. I would arrive to Miami at like 9 in the morning, go to the hotel. I'm so excited because I'm gonna shower, I'm gonna get ready for the day, and they would say, your room will be ready at 4. And you're thinking, what am I gonna do now, right? There's no reason to rush to a destination just to be kind of uncomfortable for a few hours. Unless you have a plan, something to do, this may work. And let's also not forget, if you do wake up at 3 in the morning to catch that flight, that day, you're gonna be so tired. Like if you're going on a short trip, why are you going to bed early on your first night because you had to wake up super early? I think honestly, just arrive at a normal hour and you will have a better day. My second mistake is I no longer fly different airlines because the flight is cheaper, right? So I have committed to a airline group. So that means whenever I'm flying, I get points for status. And with that status, you get extra perks while traveling. Now, if you don't travel a lot, this may not be as important, but as someone who travels quite a lot, it's really important to just stick to your one airline or airline group because you can earn so many points and just have a better overall travel experience. I do have status with an airline and that has gotten me upgraded on international flights. I have free checked bags, I board the plane early, and so all of those extra perks help because I stuck to one airline and grew a status with them. I have done this mistake and I will not do it again. I will not book a flight with a connection that's on a different airline. This is a huge mistake. Especially if you check a bag, because they're not going to connect your bag like if you fly with the same airline because they could care less. It's not even their airline. So if you have a checked bag, I would highly suggest not doing this because if you do, you have to get your bag off of that first flight, recheck it at your new airline, which will require you to go through security again. And it's going to be a huge time waster. It's very highly risky, especially if there's any bit of a delay. This is a no-no, you guys. So if you're going to do a connection, make sure it's on the same airline. And also this goes for like international flights. If you have a connection internationally, like this is very tricky waters. You have no idea how long customs will be. Sometimes it's like super fast. Sometimes you're waiting for 30 minutes. And if you have a very short connection time and you're on a different airline, I hope you the best. It's gonna be a little tricky and you may miss your second flight. It's also not good to do those connections in a short time. It's very stressful. If you have to do a connection, make sure it's on the same airline. This mistake applies to my younger self. I will no longer go out to a club or party before my early flight. So my mentality when I was younger was, well, if I have to wake up at 4 a.m. for my flight, I might as well just stay up all night long. That has led to me missing my flight entirely because I was just too tired to stay up. Nothing is worse than being totally groggy and then also hungover on top of it. Like I will not party before a flight. And actually what really happened is when Al and we were in Madrid, we went to this tapas bar. It's called El Tigre. I don't know if it's still there. It probably is. And basically they give you unlimited like red wine and tapas for free. I'm not sure what the details were, but we had so much red wine. The next morning I woke up and I was like, oh my God, what time is it? It was like 7:30. Our flight to Barcelona was at 7:20 and we for sure missed it. And it was just a whole hot mess. I have photo proof of this whole incident. So I will not party before an early flight. Also goes to my point, don't book that early flight. If we would have booked a more reasonable timed flight, like 10 a.m., we would totally have made it. So I feel like, are those early flights worth it even though they're cheaper? In this case, it was way not worth it. Okay, another thing is I no longer travel without my TSA pre and global entry. If you have a few flights coming up and you don't have TSA pre-check, do yourself a favor and go get pre-check. I believe it's $80. I no longer have to take out my laptop. I no longer have to take off my shoes. And overall, my airport experience is just so much better. And then also global entry, which is a separate thing. You have to get an interview, and the process does take a long time. But once you have global entry and you come back in the United States, you don't have to wait in that long customs line. It's just great. I love it. Another travel mistake is going on an airplane without any snacks. Okay, I will not do it. The airport food is super expensive. And also I know myself, when I am starting to get hungry, I get a little upset. So for me to manage my expectations, manage my personal happiness, I am the girl who is going to have snacks. I love traveling with chomps. They are great. They are just beef jerky sticks. They're so good. They're filling and I love them. I love the jalapeno flavor actually. It kind of tastes like there's like cheese in it. I don't know what it is, but I like spicy. And these guys, I just obsessed with them. The next thing I no longer do is book activities on travel days. Travel days could be the flight day. It could be you're going to a new place within your travel itinerary and you're on a bus or a train or you're on a long car ride. That day is a wash for me. I don't plan anything to do because sometimes you just need those moments when you're traveling to just have that downtime. You want to go out for dinner and drinks that first night, but sometimes what your body really needs is just to stay at your hotel just to relax. So for me, on those travel days, I no longer plan anything. And I no longer travel during weird hours of the day. This changed real quick when I was in Rome. We had an early flight out in Rome airport. And if you know Rome airport, it is not close to where Rome activities are, like the Colosseum and stuff. It's like maybe a 40-minute, 30-minute drive. We wake up at like 3 in the morning to get into a car to go to the airport. And where we were staying, no car zone. So we had to like walk at a really weird hour. And I remember it was so quiet. There was nothing around. And all of a sudden, I just see a guy come walking towards us and he was smiling. And I said, holy crap, is this the moment we get robbed right here? And thankfully, he just turned out to be a really happy drunk guy. But the fact that he was like walking right towards us and smiling scared me so much. We grabbed our luggage and we started running away. Another thing I no longer do is use cheap suitcases. Now, cheap suitcases means a lot of things. I actually bought a suitcase from TJ Maxx. No hate on TJ Maxx. I think they have really great suitcases, but the one that I bought was not a reputable brand. It was something totally random. I like the color of it. It was like purple. I took it on one trip and it lasted me that one trip. It was like $50. On the way back to my apartment in New York City, the wheel broke off. So I had to drag this cheap suitcase down 10 blocks in New York City. And I was so upset because I just bought this suitcase. It was completely new. So now I like to get at least a reputable brand for my suitcases. I love my Samsonite suitcases and I also have a Travel Pro suitcase. This is the brand that the travel agents use. It's super lightweight. So if you're looking for a new suitcase, here's some of my favorites. I will also leave a link down below of other like suitcase favorites. I no longer overpack. Now before we get into it, doesn't mean I don't pack enough. And the reason why I no longer overpack is because after every trip, I write myself a letter or a note. I write how many days it was and I write notes of what I packed. On my last trip to Europe, I realized I needed to bring a few more toiletry items. So next time I go on the same length of a trip, I know exactly what I need to bring. If I didn't wear something, I make a note of it. So the next time I'm packing for something, I go, okay, I actually didn't wear those white pants. Don't bring it next time, bring a darker pair. Writing notes to yourself is a great way to kind of edit what you bring on a trip so you no longer overpack items. My next travel mistake I no longer do is not booking food reservations in advance, especially if you're going to a busy place or if you have a restaurant that you really want to go to, and make a reservation. Al and I are so funny because we will actually book restaurant reservations months in advance, not because you have to, but we usually plan our trips kind of far in advance. And I'm like, well, might as well just make a reservation in January for April. And it's funny because it's kind of embarrassing. It's like, yeah, we made a reservation like 4 months ago. I feel like if you're going to a new place, for me, I love trying local food. And if there's a restaurant there that I really want to try and I can't go because I don't have a reservation, I would just be really upset. So I no longer show up to that reservation without double confirm. I cannot tell you how many times we've made reservations somewhere and they don't have the reservation on their end. And yes, I feel like it should be their job to call us to make sure that we're coming, but sometimes they just don't. I've been in situations where either I've booked the wrong date and I messed up, or they just don't have the reservation and you show up and they can't seat you. So I always like to call. So I also no longer book things super last minute, just because I know for a fact things get really expensive if you book closer to the date. Last year, I really wanted to go to Paris for my birthday, and I waited totally last minute to book everything, and I actually ended up not going because everything was just too expensive. So if I want to go somewhere, I'm gonna make a plan and I'm gonna book it early, just so I can save money on accommodation, flight, and I can actually plan what I want to do in the destination. And if you've been enjoying this video so far, please give this video a thumbs up so we cannot make all of these mistakes. Another thing I no longer do, and this could be because I'm growing up or I have a bit more money to spend on travel, but I no longer do the cheapest way possible to get around. Like, for example, when I was first planning my trips, I always took public transportation, even if it took 3 hours longer. I was gonna do the cheapest way. And I realized with traveling a lot that convenience for me and saving valuable time is really important to me rather than just saving money. Another travel mistake I no longer make is being dependent on coffee. All right, in the morning, I need my coffee, and some places when I wake up in the morning and I look around and there's no coffee machine or coffee maker or anything with dealing with coffee, oh my God. What am I gonna do? Because that is like how I start my day. I have my coffee and then I can be like, okay, what's going on today? Without coffee, now I'm like, well, I need to get it. Like, it's just, ugh. I like to travel with my portable water machine. I know this is so extra. This is like if you're a coffee addict like me. And then I also bring an AeroPress, which is like so easy to make coffee on the go. And this saves me in Vegas. It saves me in hotels that just don't offer coffee machines. Instead of leaving your room to go get coffee, which takes maybe 30 minutes, depending on where it is, you have it in your room and it just saves time, it saves money, and you know when you wake up you have coffee. So I usually like to call or like look at pictures online to see if they have a coffee machine. If they don't, I will be bringing my own supplies. Another travel mistake I no longer like to make is I will try my best to no longer go on red-eye flights. If you can avoid it, avoid it. Like, for example, I know a lot of like West Coast to East Coast US flights, there's tons of red-eye options. A red-eye completely just knocks me out. It really just is not for me. So if there's a flight during the day, I'm going to take it. And this is the funniest thing. I took a red-eye from Vegas to New York. So I'm like, oh my God, it's so cheap, right? So our flight was at like 11 p.m. and we had all day to spare. I'm like, this is perfect. We have one more extra day in Vegas, it feels like. So instead of just paying a bit more money for the flight, we actually spent more money in Vegas at the hotel because we had nothing to do. So we just stood in the lobby. We had like 2 bottles of rosé, then we had lunch, and then we just hung out there. And we ended up spending way more money than our flight would have been if we just left at 2 p.m. So it wasn't cheaper for us actually. And then we had an uncomfortable red eye back home. This one is for my cruise ship people. I no longer fly out for a cruise ship on the embarkation day. If the cruise is leaving out on Saturday, I am not flying to the destination on Saturday. That to me is so stressful. I actually like, I can't even function thinking about it. I will fly out at least the day before. Ideally, I would fly out 2 days if I could, because you never know what happens. Like, can you imagine you planned your whole vacation on this cruise and you can't go because of a flight? Like, get there early. Let's not be stressed. Let's avoid stress as much as possible is basically what I've learned traveling all of these years. If we can avoid the stressful situations, we're on a good roll. This one's new for me because my last trip to Europe, it's my last straw. I will no longer go international without an international data plan. My phone, I have no service when I go to Europe. I also don't have an unlocked phone, so I cannot get a SIM card. So for me, I need to be on Wi-Fi at all times just to be on my phone, which is really risky, especially if you need to Google something. If you're lost, you need Wi-Fi to even look something up. So for me, I either need to get an unlocked phone, which basically means you paid off your phone in full, or have a plan via my cell phone provider to allow international data to go through, because it was a struggle, you guys. There was no Wi-Fi. There was no Wi-Fi for a good week in Italy, and I was basically off grid. And this is my biggest takeaway, which honestly kind of changed a lot of how I travel, and it's I no longer travel for Instagram photos. 3-4 years ago, I would go to places and just take pictures for Instagram. And this realization happened like a light bulb. It was night and day. I was in Santorini, Greece. I was filming, like this was like before I filmed a lot of my YouTube travel videos. I was vlogging my trip to Ia. I don't even have a vlog on it because the problem was when I was vlogging, there was no story. There was nothing because all I was doing that day was walking around taking pictures. So yes, I have the photos that I took to remember. And also photography for me is a big hobby of mine. But the whole purpose of my trip there was these photos. And like, I didn't really do things if it didn't involve taking pictures. Now my trips are totally planned off of experiences and things that I want to experience when I'm traveling, and of course take pictures while I do it. But instead of waking up at 6 in the morning to take pictures, I'm waking up at 8 in the morning, having a local breakfast and documenting what I'm doing as I'm traveling. I also believe that the best moments actually happen when you don't even have a camera on you. Like for example, we were in Greece. We went to this deli for like late night like food. Didn't have a camera or phone on me. We were just walking around. It's completely safe, by the way. We were also not in a very touristy neighborhood. This guy at the deli was just eating with his friends, and like I think he overheard us because we wanted to buy wine, and he's like, some wine. I'm a wine maker. I make wine in the basement. So we went into the basement. His wife was teaching their kids like music lessons. We were like in the living room with all these like wine barrels, and he was just giving us tastes of wine, and it was just the coolest moment. I was opening up to the idea that travel is way more than just taking pictures. It's really about experiencing, meeting people, and for me that is my biggest takeaway. Since that trip, it completely changed it. I was like, I can't create a video if I didn't do anything, you know? So I'm just happy that I had that realization because it changed the way that I travel. So there goes all of my travel mistakes. Let me know down below if you've made some of these mistakes. If you've made a mistake I haven't mentioned, let me know down below. With that, I hope you guys have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.